Hello, welcome to the Wildline podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. Today is the weekend review show. We're going to talk about Avengers Endgame, its second weekend after its amazing, record-breaking, record-demolishing first opening weekend where every sort of expectation was just blown away. So we're talking about its second weekend and how it did quite well. We had three new openers, wide release openers, so we'll talk about those as well. They didn't do so hot. We'll do that, maybe talk about some stuff outside the top 10 at the box office, and then walk through what's going to happen over the next few weeks. But let's just get right into it. Let's talk about Avengers Endgame second weekend. So this weekend, the numbers are in $145.8 million in a second weekend. A 59% drop, which if you listen to the show and you follow the box office, in general, a second weekend for a big wide release, you're going to want to be in like the 55% range. 59% is higher than normal, but due to the extraordinary circumstances of the opening weekend in this type of movie, a 59% drop makes sense. I mean, a 65% drop would have made sense. A 70% drop would have made sense on some level. So this, I think, in context of how it did in its first weekend, it's a pretty good drop. Per theater average here in its second weekend, it was $31K. Total gross so far for Avengers Endgame is at $619 million domestically. Worldwide, it is now the second biggest movie of all time. It broke basically just shy of $2.2 billion worldwide right now. It's the fastest film ever to gross $2 billion in 11 days, worldwide, of course. Beating Avatar's record of 47 days. So the two big things that we're looking for with Avengers Endgame, obviously, just to recap last weekend, no one expected it to open anywhere near what it did. The sort of wild, out-of-the-park home run guess was like the $300 to $310 million opening weekend domestically. It blew past that, obviously, and went into the 350 range. I think it ended up actuals, 357, I want to say. Which I knew was going to happen because they were lowballing the Sunday, and I was like, everybody knew that like it's going to go higher on this Sunday. It just definitely has to. There's no other way. So the official was 357.1 last weekend. So $100 million more than Infinity War, which was already outrageous and insane, and that beat Force Awakens. And so, it really was 100% a historic weekend at the box office last weekend. So this weekend is a little bit of a come down, I would say. The 59% drop, again, is not that bad at all. It's pretty good. I think the big thing that people were looking for this weekend is Avengers Endgame going to beat that second weekend record that Force Awakens held at 149, and it didn't get there. But I don't think... Remember, Force Awakens came out during the Christmas, and the weekends and drops are all weird during the holidays, especially the Christmas holiday. I didn't really expect it to beat that record, and the fact that it didn't isn't really that much of a surprise. But it's an amazing second weekend here. So the two big milestones that it's trying to beat right now are the all-time domestic record, which right now Star Wars Force Awakens holds at $936 million. There's a ton of debate going back and forth online about this. This is like what box office nerds live for. That's the big question. Is Avengers Endgame going to become the number one movie all time domestically, which is US and Canada? Is it going to beat that 936 Star Wars Force Awakens number? I'm going to say yes. I haven't looked. There's people online with Excel spreadsheets with drops and all these different modeling and stuff, which is why this stuff is so fun. I think it's kind of a toss-up right now is what I'm hearing. It's kind of like a 50-50 shot. I do think it's going to get there. I just feel like Avengers Endgame, there's something about it, about sort of saying goodbye to MCU on some level, at least the first phase of it, that a lot of people are going to go back and see it over and over again. Not necessarily like a Titanic or an Avatar level repeat viewing, but maybe somewhere in that ballpark. And I think you had that too with Star Wars Force Awakens. I do think it's going to pass that domestic record. I mean, the only thing that would keep it from doing that is if another movie comes out. I guess we're in the summer season. It's fucking May. Jesus. So we're officially in the summer movie season. Maybe there's something else out there that's going to sort of, hit it when it's in the last couple of weeks when it's going to get there and then sort of disappears. It's definitely possible. And then the other milestone it's trying to beat is the Avatar record all-time worldwide gross. So Avatar obviously came out December 2009 and did 2.7 billion dollars, almost $2.8 billion worldwide. Now with inflation and stuff like that, it's a whole different ball game. Like if you want to like dive into this stuff and be like, well, number of tickets sold and stuff like that, it's a whole different story. Because like if you throw in inflation, the number one movie all time domestically is Gone with the Wind, with a $1.8 billion gross domestically. That came out in 1939. I don't like playing that game just because there's a couple of reasons I don't like to play it. One, the inflation numbers are all over the place. I also don't trust the data pre-1960 probably. Like who was collecting this data? Where was it? Like there's like a data integrity problem with anything before there were computers essentially. That's one big issue. The inflation, I don't know how they're calculating it. Box Office Mojo uses like ticket sales or the average ticket sale. I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense, to be honest with you. Because that's not how inflation really works. And it's not like it's like an apples to oranges comparison. And then also too, it's like, I think maybe the bigger thing of all is that like the movie theater business is completely different than it was back in 1939 or 1965. Like it's just completely different. So, what we would call success now may not be successful back then and vice versa. So I don't necessarily like to do it, but if you want to know based on Box Office Mojo, Avengers Endgame sits at 619 domestic right now. That's number 74 on the list, I think, or something. No, not 74. Sorry, maybe 41 on the list. I can't really tell their numbering these. Their rank is all over the place, but it looks like about 40. So it's top 50 all time, but not even in the top 10. So that's how inflation kind of muddies the waters a bit. But I think that's kind of a waste of time. Screw that. Let's not talk about that. Is it going to beat Star Wars Force Awakens? I do think so domestically. Is it going to beat Avatar worldwide? That's a bigger question because I know the domestic box office a little bit more. Worldwide stuff, there's so much going on in different countries that it's hard to follow exactly how it's going to do. It's obviously doing very well in China. So I think it's probably going to have those long legs and beat that out. We'll see. Let's take a little bit of a look at its sort of trajectory right now compared to the other Avengers movies and Star Wars movies, because I think that's sort of obviously the echelon that it's in. We're in the 10th day of release right now for Avengers Endgame. At this point, Avengers was at... so we're at 619 for Endgame. The first Avenger movie was at 373. And that kind of is like... Because that wasn't like how long ago. That was like 7 years ago. And when that came out and broke the 200 mark, it was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. That blew my mind. And I wasn't like following the box office that much back then. I go through like periods of like, it's like feast or famine with like box office analysis for me. And I was definitely in like this famine. I was not paying attention to it. So when I saw this headline for Avengers breaking 200, I was like, what the freak is going on? Because I'd never even imagined a movie would break $200 million like that, especially a movie like Avengers. But just to give you a comparison, that's at 373 in its 10th day. Endgame's at 619. Like this is the different. It's just a completely different universe than the first Avengers movie. And the first Avengers movie was like one of the most outstanding performers of all time. Endgame's like doubling it or something close to that. And it's like, this is insane. Like, Infinity War was at 453 in its 10th day. So, way above that, 150, 180 above that. Force Awakens is at 540. So I think the Force Awakens to me is the best comp for Endgame. It just feels like in line. And it's beating that significantly. Although I think it's the separation between the two is getting a little bit smaller than it was. Because, let's see, in its 7th day, Endgame was at 473 and Force Awakens was at 390. So it's like, I don't know, maybe I can't do math, but like it's like they're kind of like neck and neck. Obviously, Endgame's far ahead in terms of aggregate, but I think they're going to sort of close that gap as time goes on. Just because, remember, Force Awakens with that holiday release, it was like pulling insane numbers during the week in like the end of December and January. Endgame can't compete with that. Kids are still in school. Colleges aren't necessarily out yet. So I think it's that's where Force Awakens has an advantage. And The Last Jedi was at 368 in its 10th day. So the whole end of this whole like mini rant here is that like Endgame's way ahead of all these other movies. I think it's going to start to slow down and become a little bit more neck and neck with Force Awakens, but I do think it's going to beat it out in the long run for the domestic record. And the question is, where does it go from here? It dropped 59% this weekend. Next weekend, I think that drop's going to come down a lot. I would imagine like a 50% drop next weekend, maybe 45 to 50%. And that's when the legs will kick in. And that's when it'll really determine whether it's going to break this domestic record and the worldwide record. The worldwide record's it's way too like gray for me right now. I can't really tell. Domestic, I feel like it has a really good shot at beating Star Wars. So that's Avengers Endgame second weekend. Amazing performance overall. We'll watch that one all the way through as it goes towards that domestic record. So another wide release opener this weekend, or I guess the first one we're talking about that's new, The Intruder, which I found out is like one of the most common movie names ever when I was trying to search for it on Letterboxd. There's got to be like 100 movies called The Intruder over the last 100 years. From Sony Gem, did $11 million this weekend. And only 2,222 theaters, not even enough to get CinemaScore to do a score for it. I thought that was a little bit strange. Per theater average was essentially $5,000 per theater. This one had a really low budget. I've heard like $5 million. I've heard like $8 million, kind of like the Blumhouse model. And Sony Gems isn't like an imprint to Sony that does like horror movies and thrillers, and they usually give them pretty low budgets. It was kind of the Blumhouse before there was Blumhouse, because Sony Gems has been around for a long time. And this one, the performance here is okay. I think, for what it is in that production budget, and I can't imagine they spent a huge chunk of money on marketing. It's an okay performance. In terms of what the critics thought, they hated it. 27% Rotten Tomatoes, 4 out of 10 overall score from critics, which is really terrible. Like, the critics score 27% is bad, but like 4 out of 10, this is like ravaged this film. Obviously, no cinema score. Audience score Rotten Tomatoes was 49%. Grain of salt, of course. Letterboxd was 2.3, which is low. Try to find some comps for this. I guess like thrillers aren't that. I should have looked at that movie that came out on Mother's Day last year. I forget what it was called. Thriller, like home invasion thrillers, just like aren't, I guess, like super popular in the last few years. But I found Us 3.9 on Letterboxd, so way below that. Gone Girl was 4. How is Gone Girl a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd? Like, I've seen that movie probably like 30, 40 times. It was on HBO, and I'd like moved away from New York and like kind of was living a monk's life in Nashville, and like I probably saw like parts of that movie. I'm shooting like 100 times, and like there's no way that movie's a 4 out of 5, especially with the art house crowd. Like, I don't even know whether like that's an insane score. It makes no sense. Like, at most like a 3.2 out of 4. I mean, Fincher's always amazing, but like that was one of the worst movies he's ever put together, and it wasn't because the script's terrible. I mean, whatever. I'm not gonna get into it. So obviously, The Intruder's way below that. Bird Box 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, so it's even below that, which I thought was very poorly received. Quiet Place is the 3.8, I think. I forgot to write the last number. I think it is 3.8. The closest comp I found for this one on Letterboxd would be Unforgettable, which I think is a really good comp. Low budget, kind of trashy thriller. Unforgettable had a 2.1, and this was a little bit better than that. So Unforgettable is a great trashy watch. It's going to become a cult classic, I feel like. So the overall story on the quality, it's not a good movie. It's just not a good movie. 2.5 on Post Track, which is terrible. And obviously I told you CinemaScore is not publishing a score for this. I guess it's because it's not in enough theaters, only 2,200 theaters. I just find that you think it's a wide release over 2,000. You think CinemaScore could find enough people to take the survey, but whatever. In terms of the demographics here, 66% over 25, 25% under 25, pretty much average movie-going audience there. Females were 57%, males were 43%. That's really skewed towards females there. Usually it's like a 51 to 53% male to female ratio. 34% African American. That's way above normal, which is about 12%. That makes sense because of the lead characters. The director, it was kind of focused on the African American demographic. 34% Caucasian. That's way lower than normal. 53% is your average movie-going Caucasian audience, or at least ratio of the audience. 19% Hispanic. Latino is a little bit lower than normal. 9% Asian, kind of in line with normal. So definitely they hit the right demographic here. They did show up to go see this. Like I said, low budget. Deon Taylor, who made this movie, has a couple other movies coming out this year. Meet the Blacks 2, The House Next Door, and Black and Blue, which is like a female cop movie. So like he's into like the lower budget stuff, kind of like the Blumhouse model. I don't know that he's had a hit like Blumhouse has had before, but I think, Sony Gems just wants, and they also, what else? Sony Gems had a really big win this year with Escape Room, which came out in January, which was such almost random movie. It made sense, I guess, to dump it in January, but like I was surprised that it did so well. So Sony Gems, every once in a while they hit a home run. Is this a home run? I don't think so. Like, it's at 11 now with a movie like this in terms of like the type of movie that it is. I'm guessing, and my gut says that like a thriller like this is going to play like a horror movie in terms of its drops. So it's not going to have great legs. It probably closes out at like what, $22 million ish. Maybe like it legs it to 25, and even that wouldn't be a good multiplier. But $25 million on an $8 million, $5 million production budget isn't the end of the world. It's okay. My big concern here is like, what's the international audience for a movie like this? I don't think that it's very high. And I'm not even sure how many territories they're going to push it out into. And it hasn't been released worldwide yet. So I don't know. This feels like a movie that like, hey, let's make some money on the front end here in theatrical, and then really do a hard push on VOD a few months from now, or maybe they'll probably, it's Sony, so they'll keep the release window in place. So 90 days from now, they'll do like a VOD rental release and digital buy release, EST, electric sell through, for you industry people. And then after that, they'll sell it to like a Netflix, or license it to Netflix or HBO or whatever, like 8 months from now, 7 months from now. And maybe they'll make some money on that. And then obviously TV after that. I guess DVD sales still exist, but I mean, the thing about DVD sales and like physical rental is it's still like $1 billion business, about $1 billion or something like that. But it's just not interesting anymore to talk about. Like, it's like they can make money off of it, but it's not probably enough to like make it break even or not. So The Intruder, I'm gonna call it like it came in second. It's counter programming to Endgame. Did that bet play off? I think it played off okay. Baseball metaphor, let's do it. Maybe like a single with like tie goes to the runner at first. Maybe that's what I would call it. It's not really like a clear single or a double or anything like that. So I think it's kind of like borderline. What will really determine this, whether it wins or not, or whether it's going to be profitable, is how the next couple of weeks play out. With the quality of the film and the audience scores, doesn't look like it's going to go well for it in the next couple of weeks, but we'll see how it does. Coming in number 3 this week, and that was number 2, The Intruder. Number 3 was Long Shot from Lionsgate. This is the Seth Rogen, Charlize Theron. I guess you call it a rom-com. It's a romance movie. He's like a speechwriter. She's like running for president. Obviously, it's called Long Shot. He's, on scale of like male attractiveness, not super high, and female attractiveness, she's super high. Ha ha ha. Long shot. I get it. Whatever. What I found weird about this is that was always a big criticism of Judd Apatow's movies in like the mid 2000s. So I'm talking like 40-Year-Old Virgin, especially Knocked Up was a big example of that, where like Seth Rogen is kind of like he's kind of like an average looking dude, and he's like getting with Katherine Heigl, who's like a 9.5 out of 10, like in terms of attractiveness. Sorry to use scores because that's not probably appropriate, but it is what it is. So that was always a weird criticism of those movies, the man-child movies from back in the day. Old School's another one probably. But like, why? It felt like weird that like you're like, are they hinting at that? Are they winking at that? Is that something you want to wink at? Is that something you want to bring up in the conceit of the film and the concept of the film? It just seemed rather bizarre to me. And I think audiences were pretty confused by the whole thing. So Long Shot did $10 million this weekend in 3,200 theaters. Per theater average was $3,100. And so the production budget on this one was actually high. So when we talk about it didn't beat The Intruder, but it's even worse than that because Long Shot had like a $40 to $50 million production budget versus like The Intruder, which was like 5 to 8. So like that's a massive difference, and it's underperforming that movie. And marketing was actually probably pretty high for this because it's not a proven IP or anything like that. It doesn't have like a backstory. There's not a book written about it. So you got to build the audience from scratch here. Obviously you have Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron, but like how big are those individual stars as draws to the audiences? Like, look at Charlize Theron's movie like Young Adult. That didn't do very well, and she should have been the focus of that movie. So like, she can't really bring on an audience, and nor I don't think Seth Rogen can either. And so they needed to do some heavy lifting on the marketing side to engage audiences and stuff. So they probably spent a fair amount on marketing. So this one's gonna be probably a loss. Like, maybe Deadline brings up that like Rogen's movies have an average of a 3.5x multiplier, which is super high. So that's possible here. I just don't see it though. In terms of what critics thought, 83% Rotten Tomatoes. So critics really liked it, 7 out of 10, which is also great. Audience score 71% Rotten Tomatoes, grain of salt. Cinema score was a B, which is okay. Letterboxd was interesting here, 3.6 out of 5. A couple of comparables that I found. Juno is also a 3.6 out of 5. And that's a fascinating one too, because I guess it sort of falls. I mean, Charlize Theron is always, linked with Diablo Cody, and she did a couple movies with her, I think, right? So I guess there's a link there, but it's like a romantic comedy, and it's kind of like, I don't know. It feels like a good comp to me, but 3.6. I also find that like 3.6 for Juno feels super low, because when that movie came out, was it 2007? That was like a zeitgeist movie. Like, I remember to go seeing that. I don't know where I was, but like I saw it and I was like, this is it. Like, this is like the movie of like right now. And it really captured just the style and tone of things that were going on culturally. And I thought that would be like a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, but maybe younger people just don't connect with it. I will say the thing about Juno though, is that it has not aged well whatsoever. It really felt kind of twee. It feels really twee when you look at it now. And back then that was like what was in, what was cool, especially like, how old was I? Like 25-ish. And like the mid-20s age is like, oh yeah, like this really speaks to me. And now you look back on it and it's just so faded. And you're like, who does this speak to now? Like, it spoke to like a group of people who were 25 at the time, but like now it speaks to nobody. So that's probably why its score is like not as high as I thought it would be. In any event, so Long Shot's doing okay in terms of its scores here. Isn't It Romantic, which another rom-com that came out this year, 2.7, so higher than that. It's higher than sort of the throwaway fluff that you would get in this sort of genre that happens. In line with Big Sick, which is a beloved film, I think, from last year, a couple years ago, that had a 3.8 on Letterboxd. So it's in that realm. So quality-wise, it's here, which makes sense because Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron are very rarely in something that isn't funny or like at least has a certain level of quality to it. So post track here is 3.5, which is good. Definite recommend was 57. Not insane, but like not terrible. I think, let's look the audience wise, over 25 is 72%, under 25 was 28%. So that's a little bit definitely skewed older. I think that's one of the reasons why it's underperforming. You really got to get the under 25 audience. You just got to find a way to hook them in. Now, obviously, if it's like the Phantom Thread, is that what it's called? I was going to call it a Phantom Menace. Phantom Thread. Like, if you move like that, you're not going to get under 25 people to show up. Like, they're going to be like 20% of the audience tops. But for a movie like this, you need to drive that younger audience. And the only way you can do that is by hooking them with like social media marketing. And it has to be an engaging marketing campaign. It's like I always say, like getting a person to come to a movie is like getting them to come out to vote. Like you have to sell them so many different times on so many different levels that if you don't do it, they're not going to get in their car and go out and spend $15 to see a movie and like spend 3 hours of their Friday night, when they're not working, and their free time when they're not working. Like it's a tough barrier to get over. And with the younger people, they have a little bit more free time than us working folks, but like you just got to find a way. You really have to find a way to cut through the static that is, people are sort of, there's just a deluge of like stimuli online. And like, if you cannot find a way to cut through it, you're not going to get noticed. And I think that's what's happening with this marketing campaign. I think also like, let's talk a little bit. Female, male, 55% female, higher than normal, 45% male. That's another thing too on this one. Like Seth Rogen has a huge following. Like I would want those numbers to be pretty equal. Yeah, it's a romance film, so that definitely skews more towards the females. But like it should be closer to like a 50-50 split here. In terms of who went to go see it, 61% were Caucasian. Normally it's about 53 to 50%, so definitely over-indexed on the white folks. Latino was 20%, a little bit lower than normal. Asian was 10%, a little bit higher than normal. 7% African American, significantly lower. That's usually about 12 to 13% of the audience. Also, the movie in general had weak social media stats to what I was talking to before. So, like, if I don't really need, like, The Intruder is not really a post-mortem because it's like it kind of performed as expected. With Long Shot, we kind of do a quick one. It's like, it's not really performing to expectations. Or like, because a $50 million production budget, I think the expectation here is this thing would do, at least that domestically and then some. With Lionsgate hoping that it breaks out and does like $100 million, right? So that didn't happen. Why didn't that happen? We talked a little bit about it, but let's like walk through it super quickly. Product quality, it's there. 83% Rotten Tomato score. Cinema Score B is not fantastic. Letterboxd score is pretty good. I don't see any major quality problems here that would prevent it from doing well. Product conception, I think there's some red flags there. The pairing of Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron, it's very sort of odd couple-ish. Obviously, that's the name of Long Shot, blah, blah, blah. I just don't know if that's going to draw people in. It might even like kind of put people off. Like, why would I want to go see this? Like, what is this all about? I really don't get it. I follow the industry and I still couldn't really understand like the plot of it. Like, I was like, who's who and why is it, it just didn't really make a lot. There was I think an education problem about what the movie was going to be and what was the expectation. Is it a romance movie? Is it a drama romance? Is it like a hardcore raunchy comedy? Like, you got to tell me more. And I think that was a big issue with the conception of the movie. And then that translates over to marketing. If they're not really sure what it is on paper, in a single paragraph or a 30-second YouTube clip, like that's gonna like permeate out with the marketing. And I think they also cut off the legs in the marketing here. Like, they certainly had trailers and stuff like that, but it wasn't a hard push. And I think what happened here, and this is just me, total conjecture, I'm just guessing, this was counter programming to Endgame, and they put it in this second weekend slot of Endgame for a reason. It's like, this is totally different than Endgame. Let's get that spillover audience. Let's try and script that up. Does that work? I don't know. It's like an industry thing that they always talk about, counter programming. Sometimes it does seem to work. Here it didn't work at all. And I take a huge step back as why is this film not being successful? I think it wasn't very clear what the film was actually about. It wasn't really clear what the genre was to the audiences. And that all sort of flowed out in the marketing, and people were like confused about what it was. If someone's confused about what a product is, are they going to buy it? Absolutely not. And especially with the high barrier of entry to going to see a movie, there has to be clarity about what this is. Even if it's like false clarity, you just have to provide that clarity for moviegoers and customers, and just sort of say, hey, this is what it is. You're going to laugh, and just hit that over and over and over again, and they'll show up probably. But with this one, it's too muddled and it's too murky about what this thing was all about. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are going to make a lot of like hay about the release date, and I think that like that's fair, but like it's a wide open market here. Like, you could have put it next weekend. Is it going to perform that much better? I don't think so. I think the problem here is on the product conception and the marketing side. It just did not make sense what this movie was, and that's why people aren't showing up. Okay, so that's my little rant on Long Shot, $10 million. Coming at number 4, Ugly Dolls from SDX, $8.5 million. It's a new wide release opener. I'm not going to do a deep dive on that one because I honestly don't fucking care about this movie at all. It's just like a cheap cash grab. It looks terrible. The quality looks awful. 33% Rotten Tomatoes, 4.5 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes from critics. 69% audience score, grain of salt. Was there even a cinema score? I think like a B plus cinema score, I want to say. I don't know what SDX is thinking. I mean, the budget was $45 million, but they obviously had to pay for marketing too. Like compared to Long Shot, it's a worse performer than Long Shot. SDX is just like, they're all over the place. They can't figure out what's going on. I don't know how long they're going to last. I hope they last a long time because it's good to have like competition. And the thing I like most about SDX is that they do the mid tier films, which like the bigger studios are just like ignoring. Like the bigger studios will do like your top shelf blockbuster, and they'll do like the micro budget Blumhouse, Sony Gem stuff, but they're not doing like, and Lionsgate's the exception with Longshot, like the 40 to 60 million dollar production budget. They're just not doing it, but SDX has been doing it. So I hope they do find a way to make the formula work, because they provide a cool type of movie that we're not getting from other studios. But if you look at the recent performance, like, let's like look at from not all of last year, but like Den of Thieves did okay, Gringo was a flop, I Feel Pretty did okay, like nothing's breaking $50 million. Adrift did okay, Mile 22 did okay, like nothing is breaking out. Happy Time Murders flop, Peppermint kind of a flop, Second Act not great. The one silver lining they had this year was The Upside, their first big win, first $100 million movie since Bad Moms back in 2016. So like they have their winner every once in a while, but it's a winner out of like 1 out of 20 releases. So I don't know how they're going to survive. Best of Enemies that came out a month ago, it's a flop. And so Ugly Dolls is another flop. So I just don't know. I don't know if SDX is long for this world, unfortunately. The thing is, like, when they do have a hit, like I knew Upside was going to be a hit. Like I called that like a month before it came out. I was like, this feels right. It feels like right timing, the right duo you have on screen, the right marketing. They really hit it. Bad Moms kind of felt the same. You could just tell that it was going to do well, but they put out so much trash. Happy Time Murders, why would you release that movie? I mean, it's an absolute shit show. Mile 22, trash. Peppermint, what the hell was that? Like, why is that even a film? Den of Thieves, terrible. Molly's Game, not too bad, flopped. So it's like, I guess they're trying The Circle. Well, the thing about The Circle is I came up on Letterboxd the other day and it has a terrible score on The Circle's not that bad. Go out and check out The Circle, if you will. It opened up in April 2007, if you remember it. Tom Hanks in the lead there. And what's her name from Harry Potter? I can't remember her name, sorry. Emma Watson? Is that her name? I don't know. But not as bad of a movie as you think it's going to be. In any event, SDX is having trouble. Another flop in their belt here. So I hope they can stick around. I don't think they're going to with this level of performance, because a hit out of every 20 films is not good enough. And maybe I'm misreading those like $30 million performers. That's like their average. Maybe they're making money on those on VOD and stuff, and maybe I'm totally off base, but it doesn't seem like they're doing very well. I don't know how long they're going to last. Okay, so that's STX. Number 4, Ugly Dolls. I don't ever want to talk about that movie again, so hopefully it drops out of the top 10 next weekend. Number 5 is Captain Marvel. 48% drop, great drop, 4.2 million. Per theater average is $1,900 in its 9th weekend. Total so far for Captain Marvel, $420 million domestically. I don't want this to become like an MCU praise podcast, because it feels like it's becoming that lately with Avengers Endgame. And like I'm not even a comic movie fan, but I'm just gushing over MCU and how well it does all the time. I don't know what else to do, because it's like it's one of the most outrageous. Like, this is an outrageous performance. Like, if Endgame had not come out this year, I would be talking about Captain Marvel like nonstop, because it's just like such an awesome. It's beaten Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman was like a magical run back in like, was it June 2017? That was a magical run. It opened at 103, closed out at 412. I mean, it was amazing. Captain Marvel opened at 153, is not even closed out yet at 420. Like, it's gonna be Hunger Games Catching Fire. So like, I just don't. I don't understand how this is happening on some level. And that's why I'm just like always flustered when I started thinking about MCU, because it just like, I feel like they're breaking all of the rules of the box office. And I feel like they have captured something culturally that I don't quite understand. Why are people going to see Captain Marvel repeatedly? That's what's happening here. You don't get to $420 million without a ton of repeat business. And if you just look at the baseline numbers of this, like, so $422 million, that's US and Canada, right? That is, if you just like base like $10 tickets, which is probably, that's the average ticket cost about right now, right? You're talking that 42 million tickets just in the US and Canada have been sold for this movie since it came out 9 weeks ago. That's just like, that just blows my mind that many people have gone out to see this movie. I'm not talking about the quality, or I'm just talking about like any movie in general, that they go out to see this, and like Endgame's a totally different ballgame. But like when Captain Marvel, the whole point of this is that when Captain Marvel was coming out, it was sort of like, oh, like I think it's gonna do okay. Like I was kind of like, well, is this like really proven? It's kind of like a different character. Like, is it going to have? And every time I say that, I get like I get egg on my face. Like I said that same thing about Black Panther. I was like, oh, like it's a different character. Like, is it really going to tie into the big story? Do people care about these side characters as much? They care about them just as much as the main story, apparently. So 422 million or 420 million dollars for Captain Marvel is an amazing performance. It really is, and it's got to be what top five movie of the year. It has to be. I would think. And I think Endgame's only just helping it. I think people like can't get into Endgame, so I'll just see Captain Marvel again, then I'll see Endgame after that, right? I think that's what's happening on some level. But a fantastic, great performance for Captain Marvel in its ninth weekend. Number 6 was Breakthrough from Fox, and its third weekend, $4 million, 42% drop, which is okay. It's not amazing. Per theater average was at let's see, 1369 per theater in the third weekend. Total take so far for Breakthrough is $33 million. That's an okay performance for this. I don't have a production budget on that one, but I can't imagine it was super high. I forgot Topher Grace is in this movie. PG drama from Fox. This is like it's like a family Easter play, wasn't it? Yeah. So it's an okay performance. It's like depending on what they really poured into this, $33 million for that. It's not. I think it didn't break out at all. Essentially, is what happened. The Breakthrough did not break through. Or Breakthrough did not break out, I should say. So it's not like a huge flop because they didn't spend like $100 million on it, but like it certainly did not pop off like Fox was hoping. And it was definitely an Easter play, and I think maybe Easter was late this year. I think they opened it too late to really capture the Easter audience. It should have been like open like a month before and really sort of, you lead up to it. But not a great performance for Breakthrough. Number 7 was Curse of La Llorona, 3.5 million, a 56% drop in its third weekend. I forgot that this came out so recently. Total take so far for Curse of La Llorona is $48.1 million. That's a pretty good performance for a movie like this. I think Warner Brothers New Line's happy with that. It's like it's going to break $50 million domestically. Let's see how it's doing down worldwide, because I would imagine it would have a good audience down in Mexico, especially. $103 million worldwide. There you go. So they're going to make money on that, right? $9 million to produce. The marketing had to cost a lot because they really blanketed all the markets with this, with the trailers and stuff. So I think despite of that high marketing cost, I think it's going to make some money for Warner Brothers. Not like $100 million profit, but like a significant profit for them. And I think they're, I'm a little bit surprised by that. Like it's a Conjuring movie, sort of universe movie, but like it doesn't seem to tie that closely into everything else. I haven't seen it yet. But man, like The Nun was terrible. I don't think this movie's very good either. Warner Brothers, I don't know. Maybe they're like they're gonna wear the audience thin with this stuff. Maybe not. Maybe like Insidious 3 or Skeleton Key did well, or 4 it was. So maybe they need to keep pumping stuff like this out, and people are gonna go see it. I don't know, but it's a good performance, and it's gonna be profitable, I think. Number 8 was Shazam, also from Warner Brothers New Line, $135 million domestically. I called this a winner right away. And I gotta look closer at it right now because I'm not sure. 135 is okay domestically. Okay, 355 worldwide. Yeah, this is a winner. Yeah, this is absolutely a winner. So it cost $300 million to make. $100 million to make. Total releasing costs probably about $300 million worldwide, all markets, all platforms. It's probably has passed that now in revenue just from the box office. Not just from the box office. I think projecting out, it's going to pass $300 million in revenue. So I think this is already in the profitable range for Warner Brothers. So 2 profitable movies for Warner Brothers. Smaller movies, obviously La Llorona is a lot smaller, but Shazam's not like a huge movie. $100 million is like, it sounds like a lot of money, but that's not like top tier. Like you got to do 150, 200, 250, $300 million budget wise to be that top tier blockbuster. And this wasn't it. But the bet paid off well for Warner Brothers on Shazam. Number 9 was Little, 1.4 million, 57% drop. That's high, especially on a 4th weekend. Lost a lot of theater size. That's probably why. Per theater average is $1,000. Not great. $38 million so far for Little. That's okay. Production budget was too high though, $20 million production budget. So this one's kind of going to be a bust. Also, not a big international audience for this movie. Doesn't look like. Let me double check and see what it's doing worldwide, just to see if I'm missing like a market or something. Yeah, it's done $7 million worldwide. So $46 million worldwide total, I should say. $7 million foreign. So yeah, that one's not at best a push. Definitely, probably going to be a loss for Universal. Dumbo, the last in the top 10, 1.4 million. Talk about a flop. $109 million domestically. That's on $170 million just the production budget. The marketing budget on that had to be massive. And just to give you like some perspective here, a marketing budget for a film like Dumbo, a top tier Disney film, for worldwide marketing costs, not production costs, 130, 140. Like that's what it costs to market a film. And this thing is not going to come anywhere near profitable. Let's do the quick math on this. 170 production budget, about 3x that for total releasing costs, like $500 million to release it in every single market on every single platform, all the way through pay TV and cable TV. This thing's going to be like at least $100 million loss, if not significantly higher than that. So I think this is going to be one of the bigger flops of the year. A little bit surprising. I didn't think it was going to do amazing. I thought it was kind of going to be in the break-even territory. Tim Burton, Colin Farrell, Danny DeVito, Ava Green, Michael Keaton. You had a good cast. Eddie Elfman producing. You had like a kind of dream team with people involved in this film. It just did not hit right. It didn't look right. It was like a kid's film, but it was like scary. It looked scary. It looked like a horror film almost. So yeah, I think the Tim Burton Disney thing is on its way out. Okay, so that is the top 10, folks. Obviously the big stories here. Endgame dominated everything. As it was going to do. Did not get that second weekend record, but it doesn't matter. It's really shooting for the domestic record and the worldwide record from Avatar, and I think both are within shooting distance from it for Endgame. The wide release openers, I think Intruder's definitely the winner. Lowest production budget, best performance. Long Shot and Ugly Dolls are flops. And El Chicano, I'd missed this one, from Briarcliff, number 11. El Chicano did 700K, 600 theaters, so not really a wide release, kind of a mid-tier release. Per theater average is not great at $1,100, so that one's going to fade pretty quickly. Anything outside the top 10 to talk about? Penguins is not doing well. That's the Disney documentary. 6.7 million total for that one. It's fourth weekend. How to Train Your Dragon, it's still sticking around in its 11th weekend. Has done $160 million. I always like bring this one up because it's just there. So I don't know. Like, it's supposed to be the last one. I don't think it's going to be the last one with this performance. I think it's kind of proven itself that, like, for some reason, that world. I remember seeing the first one. The first one's really good. That world is really attractive to parents and kids, and they really want to sort of go see those movies. So I think they might do another one in a few years. Anything else? The White Crow? What the hell is that? What are these limited releases? Nonfiction from IFC? I don't know any of these movies. Apologies. High Life from A24. Oh my god. And I didn't even know this thing came out. I'm just seeing this now, and it's in its fifth weekend. It did $1 million so far. I mean, I guess that's okay. That one was like a huge, I want to say Sundance or Cannes Film Festival thing. Or maybe it was Toronto Film Festival last fall. I don't know. But there's tons of buzz about how it was amazing and terrible at the same time or something. So it is not broken out whatsoever. And I think that's mostly it. So let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen. I'm surprised that like the limited market is just so small right now. There's nothing really. Hotel Mumbai is at like $10 million total in seventh weekend. That didn't break out. Best of Enemies I talked about. That's at $10 million in its fifth weekend. That didn't break out. It's a bigger problem with like the limited market, the art house, the platform releases. It's just I don't think it's ever been tougher than it has been right now. Everything is dominated by Avengers and the top shelf blockbusters. There's just not a lot of space for movies, for movies like for High Life or Hotel Mumbai. They're just not there. And maybe people aren't interested. Maybe they just want to wait to see it on HBO or Netflix. I don't know. It's just like, it seems like the market is shifting so much towards the blockbuster. Okay, so let's talk about the next few weeks. We are in summer movie season. It doesn't feel like summer here in St. Louis, but like it's summer. The Hustle comes out next weekend, 2,700 screens from United Art releasing. I don't know that much about this one either. I'll be honest. I've been slacking on my upcoming release research. That's like a heist movie, caper movie. We'll see how that does. Pokemon Detective Pikachu. This one could be a huge breakout. I think it was tracking to like 85 million, $90 million opening weekend. That is a possibility that it does quite well. I think that is, well, we'll win next weekend. Let's see, 140, half of that's what, 70. It has the potential to beat Adventures in its third weekend. I think it does. Will it? I don't know. I feel like the because I'm not like a Pokemon person. Like my generation, or my, not generation, but like I was like probably 10 years too old for that. So I don't really understand the Pokemon phenomenon. But when this movie was announced and all the trailer, I could not escape the memes online from this freaking movie. And so it seemed like there was a ton of hype, but like, is that real hype or is that snakes on the plane hype? I don't really know. So we'll see next weekend if it opens up to like $80 million and the hype is real. Palms from STX. STX is, obviously struggling. We'll see how that one plays out. 2,700 theaters. Tolkien, the Fox Searchlight, I guess, biopic. This one looks terrible. Like the trailer looks like really poorly done. And it just feels like, why are you releasing this in like May? This seems like a October, November release. It seems like a prestige release, like for awards and stuff. I don't get why you're putting it on in May. Maybe it's like counter programming thing. Same thing as other people are trying to do. So that's next weekend. Dog's Journey then on the 17th. John Wick 3. I didn't know John Wick 3 was coming out so soon. That should do quite well. The Sun is also a star from Warner Brothers. I don't know how John Wick 3 is going to do. Like, what did the first two do? Let me just take a look at that real quick. I love the first two movies. I think they're great. The first one was such a surprise. Like, I think people just weren't expecting such a hard boil, awesome action movie. First one opened up in March 2014, opened up at 14, closed out at 43. Chapter 2 opened up in February of 2007, opened up at 30, closed out at 92. The first one did become like a cult classic hit immediately. I don't know, not cult classic. It's just kind of like, it really got appreciated after it got released, like right after, like when it got on like VOD and like HBO and stuff, or whatever. I think that like that's when people really took to that film. Chapter 2 did well, had a great multiplier, 3x multiplier. I thought it was like a little bit too much, and sequelitis. It was like too much of the same thing over and over again. And I was like, I want a little bit more nuance in the story. Excuse me, but the third one, I think, you can expect it to open to like $30 to $40 million. Everybody loves Keanu Reeves in action movies. I think this is great. Deeper into May, Ad Astra, the sci-fi movie from Fox, that should do okay. Aladdin, Booksmart, which looks pretty darn good. I think that's Olivia Wilde's directorial debut. A lot of buzz on that one. Brightburn, Sony Screen Gems, horror movie. Obviously, Aladdin's going to be the big one that weekend. Then the 31st, you're getting into Godzilla. They're starting a big push on marketing now. I've seen a few ads already. Ma, Thriller, Rocketman, musical. And then we're into June. Then we're going to talk about Dark Phoenix, Late Night, Secret Life of Pets 2. Then it's Men in Black International, Shaft. And then we're deep in the movie season, summer movie season now, with movies like that coming out. But thanks for listening, guys. I will be back next week to talk about those new ride releases. We'll see how Pokemon Detective Pikachu does. We'll see how Terrible Token does. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week. This has been the Wildline Podcast.